A powerful emotional release comes our way with the full moon in Scorpio on Tuesday, April 23rd. Scorpio is definitely no stranger to intensity, but to make things even more dramatic, this full moon is squaring Pluto, coloring the lunation with a strong death and rebirth energy. This is no ordinary full moon, and I'm here to tell you more. My name is Anastasia. I'm a traditional Western astrologer specializing in natal, relationship, and predictive readings. If you like my work, please take a few seconds to support me by leaving a like or a comment, subscribing, and pressing the notification bell. It helps. It encourages the YouTube algorithm to show my content to more people, helps me grow. You also have the option of saying thank you by buying me a coffee. I really appreciate that as well. If you have important astrology questions, if you're trying to understand yourself, feeling confused, want to know what's coming up ahead for you, you can book a reading on my website, anastasiadoesastrology.com. There's a couple of duration options and a few reading options. I also do relationship readings, so if you feel like you need help with your relationship, this is definitely relationship readings definitely over there is an option for you. Additionally, on my website, you can find a lot of different magical candles and oils that I create when the moment is right. I work carefully with astrology by selecting the opportune times, putting the right planet on the ascendant or the midheaven, making sure the moon is growing. Since we are talking about the moon in Scorpio it can be very, very intense and difficult to release and let things go because it just tends to feel things so strongly. I highly recommend getting my moon in Cancer. This is the second edition, because the first one candles were sold out. So check out the moon in Cancer candle. It highlights the moon in the sign of rulership, the sign that is very emotionally mature, that is good at flowing with emotions and understanding things and feeling them, but not dwelling too much on them. So this is perfect for anyone who's struggling finding peace and ease, who feels a little bit more anxious in their everyday life. It is also a great remedy for people born with their natal moon in Capricorn or Scorpio. It's also really pretty. It has silver foil in it. So yeah, if you're born with the natal moon in Capricorn or Scorpio, those are the sign of the fall and detriment. Capricorn is the detriment, Scorpio is the fall. Capricorn, the detriment, because you guys are just so hardworking and so ambitious and you put a lot of pressure on yourself. And Scorpio is for those reasons I described. There's just so much intensity. This is also really good if you're born with your moon in one of the dark houses, 6th, 8th, or 12th house. If it's making difficult aspects like conjunction, square, or opposition to Saturn, Uranus, Neptune, Pluto, or Chiron. I have the moon conjunct Chiron. I swear by this candle. So check out my website. Thank you for listening to this section. I appreciate you being, supportive of my work. So this full moon occurs on Tuesday, April 23rd at 7:48 p.m. Eastern in 4 degrees 17 minutes Scorpio. So of course you will feel it most strongly if you have planets in the fixed signs, and that is Scorpio, Taurus, Aquarius, or Leo, specifically between 1 and 7 degrees. We will all feel it because it's a powerful full moon. It squares Pluto, right? Pluto is it can be quiet until it's very loud. This full moon is activating Pluto, is making it quite loud. So we'll all feel it, but people with planets between 1 and 7 degrees fixed signs will feel it even stronger. Full moon represents completion of a cycle. This one got started on November 13th with the new moon in Scorpio. So here is an exercise for you. Take a look back. Reflect on November last year. What was happening in your life? Which emotions were you feeling? How did you address matters that were coming up? What kind of projects got started? This is an interesting full moon, right? We have gone through eclipse season. We are finishing Mercury retrograde, not quite out of the woods yet. It ends on the 25th. The full moon is on the 23rd, but we're almost out of the tunnel. We just had the Jupiter-Uranus conjunction on the 20th of April. Jupiter and Uranus is really urging you to find some kind of stability in your life, to plant new seeds, to begin again, right? To sort of have that like material success, material abundance, stability. And then Scorpio comes in and it either tells you that it's not just about that. It may definitely like bring your attention to the emotions. It may suggest that there are some shadows in your dreams. Like if you've been so obsessed with like making $1 million, right? And you've been so focused on like becoming so successful and financially like making the bank, the full moon in Scorpio may remind you that you're working that hard, but you also have a child that needs your attention, or your partner is starting to feel neglected. So the full moon is reminding us that we need that balance, that we need the intensity, we need the passion, we need the emotional release at times. We also need to make sure we're not forgetting our emotions. But it can also be a suggestion that as you move towards those new beginnings symbolized by the Taurus planets, and specifically the Jupiter-Uranus conjunction we just had, but even the Sun being in Taurus and Venus about to go into Taurus, you need to release something. You need to let something old die. You need to address some shadows. And the addressing shadows is very much represented by the full moon squaring Pluto. We just had the Sun square Pluto. So that would have been April 21st, 3 days before, 3 days after. It could have highlighted some passions in your life and intensified them, but also revealed to you which of those passions are destructive and healthy, toxic, which ones of those relationships feel like they're dragging you down, which one of the relationships in your life feel like that. And so the full moon continues that. The full moon says that you're still working through those things, right? So seeing where you're pushing too hard, seeing the shadows, like I said, of your desires, seeing where you're maybe losing track of having good balance in your life. It's like that king that had the golden touch. What is it? King Midas, I think. I'm gonna look it up, but I'm not sure. King Midas and the golden touch. Oh my God, look at that. So proud of myself. But it's true, like sometimes my brain just sort of stores information, and then when it's right, it pulls it up and I'm not even like aware of what it's doing. Yeah, so Midas was the king that was the one who would like touch things and they turned to gold, and then he couldn't touch anything or anyone because they would turn to gold. So it's a very lonely place to be when you're just surrounded by gold, but you have no warmth, no support, no connection. So this, like if you're dealing right now with this like powerful urges, with ego battles, with power struggles, perhaps you either need to release the relationship if it doesn't serve you, or maybe you need to release that intensity and try to find middle ground, try to find compromise. It could be a very powerful crisis type situation around this full moon. Something has been building for a while, some kind of misunderstanding, conflict, sort of things brewing underneath, and they burst, something like bursting. It's a very pimply type, very, very pimply full moon. So, of course, it could also be internal, some kind of internal crisis reaching a point of no return, but also external situations, people affecting you, allowing you to get in touch with those deep feelings and experience release. It's a great time to take a hot bath, to light some candles. Highly, highly recommend Moon and Cancer candle for this. It's just what doctor ordered. And doctor is me. I am sometimes also an astrology doctor. So I don't think there's a reason to be afraid. It's going to be intense. Yes, if you pay attention, if you talk to a therapist, if you journal, if you meditate, you can gain control over the challenging emotions and evolve, grow through it, experience transformation in your relationships, in your consciousness, in your surroundings, right? It's almost like you need this right now. Another thing is because the full moon is the opposition already and Pluto is creating a T-square. The element that's missing, which is Leo, which is the final fixed signs that's not represented, could be a medicine too. So if things feel emotionally overwhelming, ask yourself, what would a Leo do? Dance, create, dress up, film yourself, like allow your creative energy to come out and try to have some fun. So let's take a look at the 12 rising signs. As always, if you have more questions, if you want a personal look at your chart, you can book a reading on my website, anastasiadoesastrology.com. If you are an Aries rising, there's a full moon in your 8th house. We just had a Jupiter-Uranus conjunction in your 2nd. Maybe you've experienced new financial opportunities. Maybe you've gotten a new idea, a new possibility, a boost in your self-confidence, right? And so the full moon in the 8th takes your attention to the house of shared resources, the house of debts, the house of fears. And it's kind of asking you, which demons do you still need to slay, right? If you're getting this like new beginning, new personal beginning with the eclipse just happened in your 1st house, the Jupiter-Uranus conjunction in your 2nd house. So there's a lot of like growth personally, right? But what needs attention in terms of your debts, in terms of your involvement with other people? How can you move the situation to some kind of conclusion? The Pluto, Aquarius Pluto is squaring this from the 11th house. So there may be a chance to examine your dreams, to examine some of your friendships, to examine some of your relationships, right? Like 11th house is your community, it's your friendships, it's your interactions with other people. So I feel like with this sense of seeking personal success, personal abundance, and with maybe duties you have to other people, the full moon in the 8th house is urging you to transform something on a deep level. So it could be very healing. It could be all about releasing fears, releasing a need to please other people and fit in the mold that they're trying to put you in. It could also be about a need to pay off some debts if you're trying to have that financial abundance, right? Maybe get a loan once again if it's important for your future. But because the full moon represents closing a chapter, take a look back also at the last November. That would have been the new beginning, the new moon. Something maybe started in your life. Here it feels like, I really think, whatever it might be, whether it's your mental health and your fears, or it's finances, or it's agreements you have with other people, you owe me this, I owe you that. The full moon in Scorpio is asking you which agreements are serving you and which agreements need to be worked on, versus which ones are not serving you and which ones you need to release and maybe close some kind of like professional chapter, personal chapter, debts, friendships, unhealthy, like toxic situations that are holding you back. And they might be, things might be reaching some kind of peak. Let's say it's like a conflict with your partner or a conflict with your friend that is coming full circle. Let me know how this resonates, and if you're curious for more, book a reading on my website, anastasiadoesastrology.com. Moving on to Taurus rising, you're getting the full moon in your 7th house. And so this is shining light on your house of relationships as you're going through this big personal reinvention with the Jupiter-Uranus conjunction we just had in your 1st house. The sun is in the 1st house. Your focus is very much on personal growth. The full moon is also squaring Pluto in the 10th house. So there may be some kind of realization around the time of this full moon about how your ambitions, how your desires are affecting your relationship and whether they can coexist harmoniously, right? The Pluto is in your 10th house, Jupiter is in your 1st house. You are growing, you're reinventing yourself, you are maybe feeling really intensely focused on transforming your professional life, growing, gaining control over something in your life. But the question is like, how is it affecting your relationships, right? Like, is it helping? Is your partner supportive of your progress? Because the full moon in the 7th could also suggest that Maybe it's time for your relationship to change. Maybe it's the time to let go of a connection if it doesn't quite align with your future plans. Let's say you're becoming a teacher and you're teaching yoga and your contract involves you traveling all around the world or moving to a different part of the world. And so you're very much in this kind of precarious place of trying to figure out a good balance between your ambitions and your relationships. The full moon in the 7th could also bring a change. It can bring commitment. It could bring important kind of coming closer of a relationship. If you've been trying to get pregnant, you may get pregnant. If you've been looking to get engaged or married, this could also be the time when something develops, right? But I think it's like a very potent kind of potentially crisis-provoking full moon, and you very much have the option to grow through it and get closer, or maybe release a relationship, release a connection and a contract. Like this could also be about your relationship with your boss. You cannot please everyone around the time of this full moon. Something or someone will have to go. And take a look back at November 13th, 2023. We had a new moon at the time. So that would have been the new beginning. And this now is a completion. If you're curious to know more, book a reading on my website, anastasiadoesastrology.com, to get personal guidance. If you are a Gemini rising, there's a full moon in your 6th house in opposition to the Sun in the 12th, in a square to Pluto in the 9th. So lots of moving parts, right? First of all, we're coming into this full moon from the Jupiter-Uranus conjunction in your 12th house. Some type of a conception of a new creative project, of a new spiritual calling, a healing path, imagination-driven career, a desire for rest, desire for better balance, better spiritual community potentially, right? So the full moon in the 6th is saying that before you get there, you need to examine your everyday life. You need to address your work situation. You maybe need to close some chapters. You maybe need to declutter your space, take care of your health, see some doctors, right? Make sure that you have everything streamlined, everything organized, right? The square to Pluto in the 9th could bring up some ideological issues with people in your life, or maybe you're literally trying to become an astrologer, but your family is very religious and they don't support astrology. So you're dealing with this like frustration there, or it could have to do with, sort of, even somehow I'm like thinking of like sexual orientation, like telling your family that you're gay and they're not approving of you or something. But I think it's more so about like finding that balance and making sure that you're not just letting yourself float off into the like imaginary world, right? With the Jupiter-Uranus conjunction. And it's not necessarily imaginary, but I think like you are starting to prioritize spiritual fulfillment more so than maybe material gains. And so with the full moon in the 6th, it's bringing you down to earth, and it's also maybe suggesting some kind of a crisis that involves a legal situation, a visa, disagreement ideologically, education situation. Like you realize that you can't quite do something because you haven't finished your degree completely. So there is a pull to be grounded, to be realistic, to complete things in the real world that need completion, to address your health, address your diet, address your work routine, clear your space, clear your mind, so that the new beginnings can show up in your life soon. And take a look at last November, because that's, if I haven't said that yet, that's when we had the new moon. So that could have been the time when new beginnings or new ideas have been coming into your life. If you're curious to know more, book a reading on my website, anastasiadoesastrology.com. If you are a Cancer rising, there's a full moon in your 5th house of romance, pleasure, creativity, babies. And it's a culmination of the chapter started in November 2023. So take a look back and think of what was happening in your life. We have just had the Jupiter-Uranus conjunction in your 11th house. There's new beginnings that involve new dreams, new community, new role you have for yourself, partnerships with other people, expansion. You're growing. Your social circle is growing. Your dreams are growing. And so the full moon in the fifth house is connecting you back to reality. It's bringing you kind of back down. It's suggesting that before you pursue these big dreams, it's also squaring Pluto in the eighth, right? So before you pursue these dreams, you need to handle matters connected to your kid. You need to maybe finish some projects, right? The full moon in the fifth house could be about like wrapping up a creative hobby, ending a relationship if you feel like it's outdated and it's kind of blocking your growth and it's slowing you down. Changes that involve romance as well, maybe trying to rebalance things so that once again you have freedom to travel the world and to be an influencer or whatever you might want to do. The square to Pluto in Aquarius in the eighth house is suggesting to me that if there is something in your life right now that is tying you down and holding you back, you are getting really fed up with that. You're potentially getting fed up with the need to be there for other people, especially if they don't appreciate you. You're getting fed up with always potentially considering, how your actions affect other people. Maybe even you're getting frustrated with some kind of financial situation. And so this can all burst and come into the open and really emphasize a need for change, a need for transformation, a need for death and rebirth. Like if you rely on your parent to always watch your child, maybe you say that, okay, it's enough. I'd rather hire a nanny than, be kind of reliant on somebody where it's like so complicated when the family is involved sometimes. So changes romantically, letting go of a relationship, committing to a relationship, changes with your child, maybe needing to kind of figure out a different flow when it comes to parenthood, changes around pleasure, deep realizations around what pleasure is, what you value, what you care about are all likely here. Let me know how this resonates, and if you're curious to know more, book a reading with yours truly on my website, AnastasiaDoesAstrology.com. Now, if you are the sparkly and shiny Leo rising, there's a full moon in your fourth house of home, family, and living situation. Take a look back at what ideas, what developments, what projects and family dynamics were happening in your life in November 2023. That was the time when we had the new moon in Scorpio. So this full moon is a culmination, a change connected to that. So definitely do some reflecting. The full moon in the fourth brings completion, transformation, change in your home, in your living situation, in your family dynamics. So maybe you're moving in with your significant other. Maybe you've been thinking about it, you've been looking at places, and now you're finally ready. Maybe you're needing to move because your job is taking you somewhere, right? We just had the Jupiter-Uranus conjunction in the 10th house. Exciting developments, new opportunities professionally. New chapters opening, exciting new horizons, right? And so as you're gearing up for these new beginnings, you need to change your living situation, or you need to maybe even create an office space for yourself, or create a home gym if you're trying to become a yoga teacher, open space, redecorate your space, right? So that you can film yourself maybe. There is a square to Pluto in Aquarius in the 7th house. So I can also see for some of you tensions between your dreams, your goals, and your partner's dreams and goals. Their sort of vision of your future together. The Pluto in the 7th house could be a sign of the partner going through a more intense period, a partner maybe healing or transforming something, and you're very much trying to find balance between like how to feel secure in the home, how to feel successful in the outside world, how to manage your relationships. So some kind of crisis is very much possible around this time too. Like, especially if it's some kind of, like family dynamics, your family, your partner's family, and maybe an opportunity with the full moon in the 4th house to try to find more peace, to try to find more balance, to try to find a happier place that you can live with your partner together. Yeah, I think you're very much like, as your goals and your dreams about the future transform, so does your living situation, and also even like your comfort zone, because you're becoming ready and more willing to open yourself up to new possibilities. Let me know how this resonates. If you're curious to know more, book a reading on my website, anastasiadoesastrology.com. If you are a Virgo rising, there's a full moon in your third house. So we just had a Jupiter-Uranus conjunction on the 20th of April in your ninth house. Growth, expansion, new opportunities to teach, new opportunities to study, opportunities to travel, to write, foreign people, big visions, big dreams that have just come into your life. The full moon in the third is saying do not float too far away. It's saying, okay, there's still things that you have to take care of in the real world. There's changes you have to make in the real world in order to make yourself feel like you have the space for these new beginnings, right? So the full moon in the third house could suggest a need to address your schedule, maybe redo your schedule, maybe release some commitments, maybe rethink your relationships. Like your immediate sort of time wasters, right, I think are becoming quite visible. It could also be very professionally oriented. There's a square to Pluto and Aquarius in the sixth house, and something at work, some of your commitments, some of maybe other people relying on you is just coming, like it's becoming really intense at this time. And there is a need with the full moon to have honest conversations, to get things out in the air, to talk to siblings, to neighbors, and to come to some kind of agreements. Very much though feels like, how can you get to that place of like being a teacher, being a guide, being professionally successful, being a full-time writer, right? Like the full moon in the third will suggest that like there's small, tangible steps, and there is literally like, you know, if you are becoming a writer, you're selling a book or you're planning to sell a book, maybe you need to move into a space that has an office or create an office for yourself. Maybe you need to get different technology. Maybe you need to rethink how you spend your day, get rid of some agreements, commitments that you have that are not serving you. So it could be like heated, especially if you've been feeling like there's like siblings or neighbors or colleagues that are taking advantage of you and not allowing you to be free, right? Because this could be a really good time to kind of clear the air with them. Take a look back at November 2023 when we had the new moon in Scorpio, because that would have been the period when things were just starting up, or you could have realized a need for change, and now it's very obvious, like in your face. And if you're curious to know more, book a reading with me on my website, anastasiadoesastrology.com. If you are a Libra rising, you are completing a financial chapter or a chapter of personal self-worth, personal kind of growth with this full moon on the 23rd of April. Take a look back at November. What was happening with your finances? What was happening with your confidence? What was happening with your goals? Because that would have been the new moon in Scorpio, the new beginnings. Now it's the full moon, completion, change, culmination. So we just had the Jupiter-Uranus conjunction in your 8th house, which is representative of new beginnings and partnerships, new resources, new commitments, new contracts, new investments, right? And so the full moon in the 2nd house is the time to look at your personal resources and your personal values and examine how your values fit with other people. Do you feel like you've negotiated everything? Do you feel like you need to set some money aside for the future? Do you need to pay some debts so that you can join the partnerships full on? What kind of financial changes you need to make, right? Like if as you are entering this new chapter, as you are starting a new relationship, a new partnership, a new kind of beginning, maybe you need to ask for more money. Maybe you need to quit your job. Maybe you need to transform how you view things. So it's very, 2nd house is the place of values. 2nd house is the place of finances. And because there is the opposition between the resources and values of other people and your personal resources, and there's also a square to Pluto in the fifth house of pleasure, romance, joy, children. It's like you're looking at these topics and maybe you're needing to figure out how to make things happen. And let's say it's parenthood related, right? Like maybe you and your partner do not agree on parenting strategies, and so you really need to figure it out, and you internally need to figure out what can you let go of versus where do you need to put your foot down. If we're talking about love and moving in together, maybe, right, there's also a need to come to an agreement of some sort. So I think this full moon in your second house could be very deep in terms of inner self-understanding, and it could also bring maybe financial developments, like you're paying off a debt, you're getting a raise, you're quitting a job, you setting some money aside, you starting a business, or like finishing some kind of financial endeavor and getting a payment for something. But like also quite strong need for better balance. You may also be realizing that on your journey towards like creative fulfillment, love, and pleasure, you threw yourself off balance and you need to take a step back and get centered and get grounded. Let me know how this resonates, and if you want to know more, book a reading on my website, anastasiadoesastrology.com. If you are a Scorpio rising, there's a full moon in your first house of self. And that's a big deal, right? You get one of those per year. So it's your personal change and rebirth. We had the new moon in Scorpio in November 2023. Definitely reflect back. New moons are all about new beginnings. Full moons are about endings and completion. What was happening in your life in November? So it's important to understand the context. We just had the Jupiter-Uranus conjunction in the 7th house of relationships. New beginnings and partnerships and relationships, new ways of fitting with other people, starting a business, signing new contracts, working on getting married, becoming pregnant. And the full moon is saying that as you are figuring out and you're focusing so hard on these relationships, make sure you're not losing yourself and like kind of take a step back, get connected with yourself, rethink how you can maybe change your appearance, change your diet, change your health, improve those things, right? There's also a square to Pluto in the 4th house, which could also, to me, suggest fears and shadows connected to your childhood or connected to your family, connected to starting a family, maybe something that is holding you back, that is making you feel insecure, right? Like maybe there's like a lot of family drama right now and you feel like your partner will judge you for it. Or just a need to find like a better balance between your partner's family and your family, and maybe you're getting caught in between all the drama. And the full moon in the 1st house is really like all about take a step back, focus on yourself, go within, and focus on making like healthy improvements. It's also an invitation to kind of ask yourself, what are you willing to compromise on versus what you're not willing to compromise on? Let's say the new beginnings in your relationship are due to the fact that your partner is like getting a new job and now you have to move and you've been going along with everything, but the full moon can make you realize that you actually don't want to move. So you may need to do long distance for a little bit, or you may need to have an important conversation, right? So it's very big kind of like death and rebirth personally, releasing fears, tending to your body, taking care of your health, and becoming more of an ally to yourself. Let me know how this resonates, and if you want to know more, book a reading on my website, anastasiadoesastrology.com. If you are a Sagittarius rising, there's a full moon in your 12th house, bringing attention to your mental health, to your self-defeating tendencies, your escapist tendencies, your bad habits. We just had the Jupiter-Uranus conjunction in your 6th house. The sun is in your 6th house, and you're maybe like really busy solving problems, handling work matters. Your life may just be like full of things. Everything is going on. And the full moon squares Pluto in the third house. And this feels like something on your schedule. There's just like one final piece atop of the Jenga tower that makes everything crash down. There is another phone call, another email, another request somebody makes of you that normally you would just be okay with. But right now it's just all too much, all too overwhelming, and it can result in a fight. It can result in some kind of, like you stub your toe and you scream at your colleague and you realize that it's not about the toe or the colleague, that it's about the job that is overwhelming. So the full moon in the 12th house is, to me, a sign that you need to go within and you need to work on your mental health. You need to work on resting and taking a step back and kind of doubling down on your self-care protocols, right? Because if you've just been focused on like new beginnings and focused on giving other people your time and handling a lot of duties, there is a high chance that you've been neglecting your health, your mental health specifically. So the full moon in the 12th could be about starting therapy, experiencing breakthroughs in therapy, being more clear about what in your life needs to be released, becoming more self-aware of bad habits, and being a workaholic can definitely be a bad habit. Being a people pleaser could be a bad habit. So watch out for kind of difficult conversations at this time. Harsh words may get exchanged. And if something in your life manifests as like a crisis, it is likely that it's trying to teach you something. So like this crisis, this fight, this toe stubbing incident, they're all here to help you take better care of yourself, help you create kind of better protocols around sleep, around mental health, around spirituality. Maybe you need to start doing yoga. Maybe you need to get a Moon in Cancer candle to light it up when you're feeling frustrated. It's a good one. But yeah, like try to take it easy, try to relax as much as you can around the time of this full moon, and reflect on November 2023, because we had a new moon in Scorpio in November 2023, and you may have been realizing something or started a mental health practice, therapy, yoga, and now you're feeling like it's working for you or it doesn't work and you need to maybe recommit or change things up. Let me know how this resonates. If you want to know more, book a reading on my website, anastasiadoesastrology.com. Next, Capricorn rising. There's a full moon in your 11th house. And this is all about release and change and completion in the sector of friendships, networks, social obligations, social media, completion of dreams, releasing of dreams, right? We just had the sun enter your 5th house. We just had the Jupiter-Uranus once in 13 years event happen in your 5th house. And you are quite focused on becoming a parent, becoming creatively free, starting a new relationship, following your passion. And the full moon in the 11th is also bringing in the element of like friendships and connections, and also your entanglements with other people. And I think the big question is like, which ones are healthy versus which ones are not, which relationships and agreements you have, and almost like, what's on your social agenda, on your calendar that you need to release. There's a square to Pluto in the 2nd house, and you're maybe realizing that some of your dreams require a lot of investment, and maybe you're not ready to make those investments. There might be conflicts around money in relationships. There are conflicts around values. Let's say you are working on becoming creatively independent, or you are working on becoming a parent, and then one of your friends makes like a snarky comment that is not at all supportive. And so based on that disagreement, or or they owe you money and they're not paying you back, they're sort of like taking advantage of your kindness, you may be realizing that this person is not right for you. You may be disentangling yourself from some kind of social obligations. Let's say you are volunteering every Saturday, and now that you just had a child, you cannot anymore do that. Or now that you're starting a course of study, you need to change your schedule. So there is very much potentially some kind of crisis in friendships that is prompted by the financial disagreement or disagreement of values, and then either you're working through it and you're having tough conversations and you're figuring out how you can save the relationship, or you're feeling a lot more cut and done. Let me know how this resonates, and if you're curious to know more, book a reading on my website, anastasiadoesastrology.com. If you are an Aquarius rising, there's a full moon in your 10th house. Completion, change, culmination of the chapter that got started with a new moon in Scorpio in November 2023. So now we get the full moon in Scorpio. To remind you, we just had the Jupiter-Uranus conjunction in your 4th house. The sun is in the 4th house. There is a lot of attention on home, family, living situation, improving your living situation, moving, finding more peace in the home, creating more stability, investing in a mortgage. You're sort of very kind of focused and insular right now. But there's also a square to Pluto in the 1st house, and the square to Pluto is almost like some kind of crisis is emerging that you no longer can ignore. And that crisis is affecting both your home life and your career. And so with this crisis and with the new beginnings in the home and family, there's an invitation here with this full moon to transform your work life. Like, let's say Jupiter-Uranus really makes you crave time with your family. You really want to move closer to them. You want to move back to your hometown. And then Pluto in Aquarius brings like a crisis where a boss tells you to stay at work extra long, right? And you feel like this is not what you want. This is not what makes you happy right now. So quitting a job is quite likely here. Like, but be mindful of this like underlying hot, scolding energy. Try not to just like sort of act without thinking. But the full moon in the 10th, I think, suggests a change professionally, completing a chapter, quitting a job, letting go of a job, starting maybe a new job, needing to rearrange the way you do work, maybe moving to work from home more, maybe talking to a boss about the difficult toxic situation. So on your path towards more balance, towards more time with your family and more kind of comfort and security, you need to make sure you're not shying away from having difficult conversations. Also, not shying away from letting something outdated die so that you can have more stability and comfort in your life. Let me know how this resonates. If you're curious to know more, book a reading on my website, anastasiadoesastrology.com. Last but not least, beautiful Pisces rising. There's a full moon in your 9th house with the sun in the 3rd, the square to Pluto in the 12th. So the full moon is a completion of a chapter that got started with the new moon. We had a new moon in Scorpio in November 2023. What was happening in your life? The full moon in the 9th house represents changes around education, around travel, around legal matters, writing and publishing. It can also represent an ideological shift. But thinking about the conjunction of Jupiter and Uranus we just had on the 20th, which is still very much in effect, the conjunction of Jupiter and Uranus in your 3rd house is all about new beginnings in your everyday life. It's all about happier thoughts. It's all about better balance, more involvement with community, more writing. And the full moon in the 9th in a square to Pluto in the 12th could suggest that there's some kind of like crisis, some kind of self-defeating habit you have, or an outdated way of thought that is holding you back. Like there is an ideological shift that is required. Maybe you're completing some kind of chapter related to education. Maybe you're completing a legal matter. Like something needs to close in your life in order to create more stability, more abundance, more balance in your life. And so you're looking at these kind of very philosophical questions, I think, on some level. With Pluto in the 12th house, like there's a bad habit you have that is costing you money, that is maybe making you feel bad about yourself, and it comes to becomes more visible. It maybe results in some kind of conflict with people in your life, and you are realizing that you need to let it go. you need to let something go, even if it's just a thinking pattern, right? Other possibilities, take a look back at the new moon we had in November and take, kind of possibilities of the full moon in the ninth can also involve moving, graduating, finishing studies, getting rid of or not getting rid of, but like completing some kind of legal situation. If you've been waiting for a visa, maybe you get it, or maybe you don't get it and you realize that maybe you don't need it to begin with. I definitely think it's like very philosophical, but I think for many of you, it could also be travel, education, legal matters, writing and publishing connected. Because even if we're talking about like writing here, right, both third house and the ninth house represent writing, but like I think ninth house is like big world publishing, everybody sees it, versus third house, you're just jotting ideas down. So it also feels to me like, how can you bring those two together? How can you bring your immediate environment, your thoughts, your commitments, and make them work for you, make them inspire change in your life? I feel like ninth house sometimes is like a little bit complicated to describe because it deals with your like faith, and we're also highlighting 12th house, which is all about like hidden things and self-defeating tendencies. But once again, either it's about letting something go or it's about integrating a part of yourself that you haven't expressed and then trying to figure out how you can integrate that part to the best of your ability. Let me know how this resonates, and I hope you have a good full moon in Scorpio. If you're curious to know more, book a reading on my website, anastasiadoesastrology.com. There are a few options on there. There are 30-minute, 60-minute readings, relationship, natal, predictive consultations. And yeah, and that's it for this video. I hope everyone has a happy full moon. If it's intense, let the feelings come. Know that they will pass. It doesn't, the full moon effects lasts for a few days, but they don't last forever. And soon you will feel better. And more likely, if there is some kind of crisis, it's likely that it will help you get stronger, help your relationship, help your journey feel more aligned with your core being. Anyways, I'll wrap it up here and I'll talk to you soon. Bye.